Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my kind of path that led me on a journey of discovery as to how and why, and the fact that I am a trans woman. For many people, there's a different pathway, there's different realizations. Everyone's story looks very, very different, so it's not a one size fits all. But I want to share my individual story in the hope that maybe it'll resonate with someone else, because mine is quite unique in the sense that I feel like it differs greatly from the typical trans woman's discovery of how they're trans. So essentially, I'll start with the beginning of my life, like the early days, because obviously every story has a beginning. So let's start there. So, part one. I'm a single child, only child, really. I don't know why I said single child, but yeah, I'm only child. My parents divorced rather early on. I believe I was 3 years old. So this led to some conflict in decision-making processes, whereas my mum wanted me to go to a co-ed school for the entirety of my schooling, whereas my father, who had attended only a single-sex male school, was really pushing for me to go to a boys' school, a boys-only school, no girls, just boys. And add in the fact that in my country, pretty much all of these private schools that are same sex, aka just women only, men only, they're quite highly religious. They're definitely affiliated with different religious bodies, whether that be Catholicism, whether that be Anglican churches, Protestant churches, Methodist churches. Pretty much 99% of them are affiliated with the church. So add in the fact that it's just boys, coupled with a very religious motivating factor that kind of is the undercurrent to all of the studies and all of the on-campus life. So there was definitely a lot of conflict between my parents in terms of where I would end up. Um, Unfortunately, I did end up at a boys' school, but that's part two. So for part one, they compromised. I went to a co-ed school that had both boys and girls. I was there from kindy through to the end of year three. So it was kindy, pre-primary, year one, year two, and year three. These were the best schooling years of my life. I really felt like I had a lot of friends. I fit in. There was really no bullying whatsoever. Both the boys and the girls were very kind and welcoming. And at recess and lunch, people from different year groups would all kind of coexist, commingle, play fun games, sit together, eat food, do activities. Truly was amazing. And in fact, I think it set me up for failure when I finally finished in year three and couldn't continue purely due to the fact that it converted to an all girls school and that I had to go to an all boys school thanks to my father. So, part two, in year four, I go to an all boys school. From the very first day when they made us split up, then we had to find someone in the room to create a pairing with. I struggled to find someone to pair with. And even the other person, obviously, they must have struggled as well because we ended up going together and we were kind of a last pick. I just felt like we didn't connect and I felt really out of my depth and like I didn't know what to do. I didn't really know how to socialize. I didn't know how to connect with these very boyish boys. And from that day on, the bullying commenced. The bullying was very specific though. I've witnessed other bullying whilst being a student and also in my role as a social worker counselling young people aged 12 to 25, because everyone that comes in I always ask them about their bullying experience, their current school experience or their past experience. So I do believe I'm rather full bottle on childhood, adolescent and young adult bullying, but for me mine was oddly very, very targeted and specific. So from year 4 through to year 10, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's a lot of years, every single day without fail, and probably every single hour even, people would call me a faggot, a gaylord, a sissy, and just all these derogatory terms to do with femininity and gayness, homosexuality. Honestly, I'm not very flamboyant. I'm not that feminine. I'm quite quite tomboyish, actually. But somehow these young boys, they could just sniff it out. In fact, they're probably the best at discovering someone that is homosexual, queer, gender non-conforming, non-binary, gender fluid, and even trans, for example. They can sniff it out, these kids. I don't know how they can do it, but they knew, like, at least a decade. They knew a full 10 years prior to my knowledge that I was essentially trans, which is quite shocking. But that doesn't detract from the horrific experience that I had in school. So part 3 is me trying to fit in at school. So I tried to get amongst it and play the real boyish sports like football, rugby, cricket, and all these sports I really don't like. I'm just terrible at ball sports. You see I'm wearing these glasses? I have basically no hand-eye coordination. At boxing, when my coach makes me do these drills with the tennis balls, I can't even really catch them. I just go by feel. I'm just feeling it out. I can't go by vision, you know. So even though my heart was set on doing what the mainstream was doing at my school in order to fit in and to ease this daily bullying, I just couldn't. So it just continued all the way up to year 10, and eventually it got too much and I left that school. And at this point I went to another school, which was it was co-ed. But the sad thing is I had become so infamous in terms of being an easy target, I suppose, that people from my old school contacted people at this new school, and after about 2 weeks of bliss they actually discovered that it was me, and the bullying got even worse. And it was totally rampant. It wasn't the girls doing it, it was the boys, but the school mostly comprised of boys. And to make matters worse, I'd actually done the stupid thing of trying to change my name on the school records. So then once that was revealed, it made my case even worse. So changing the name didn't work, trying to conform didn't work. But then I did try one thing. I tried to stand up to the bully. I don't condone violence, but standing up to the bully, it did get me expelled, but it didn't stop the bullying, whether that was through creating fear or through my forced removal from the school. I'm not sure, but it did end it. So at this point, I only had year 11 and year 12 to complete. And in my free time after getting expelled, I had actually discovered martial arts. I kind of bought into the bullshido BS thing where like you can train with the master or the sensei or the coach, and they can instill something in you and they can build your confidence even outside of the physicality of it all. Irrespective of the techniques you learn, the inner confidence can help you. So I was like, maybe this is the answer. So I really dedicated myself in 2010, which was year 10 for me. I would train 3 times a day. And finally, I actually had found a community that accepted me. I made lots of friends. They welcomed me to both classes and extracurricular activities like going out to Nando's. And we'd go to competitions as a team. We'd cheer each other on. People would cheer me on. For the first time in my life, people were supportive. And they weren't calling me like the F word or gay or any of these other derogatory terms. I truly felt happy. But I still felt weird inside. So this is where the trans narrative gets threaded into the story. So all throughout childhood, in my early days, I really liked playing dress-ups. And I remember one key moment that stood out is when I was invited to a fairy party. And I went as a fairy. This was an amazing experience, and it stood out to me when I was thinking about this video. And in daily life it comes up, and my parents remember it fondly. So I really think that was like that was probably the earliest kind of sign. And then the secondary sign was everyone in school picking up on it. And then the third sign, which is the most complex sign and the sign that really led me astray and set me back in terms of my transition, was also the thing that improved the bullying, which was getting involved in the martial arts. So in terms of the martial arts, even though I was finally accepted and the bullying was gone, that only removed perhaps 20% of my depression and internal struggles. And in hindsight, I can understand what the remaining 80% was, but at the time, I simply thought it was because I wasn't good enough, or I didn't look good enough, I didn't have the performance. So all these things kind of amalgamated, and that's when I got into training in the gym in addition to training the martial arts. So I'd go to 2 or 3 martial arts classes a day, as well as going to the gym. I got really dedicated to the gym because I really felt that once I got bigger or leaner or more aesthetic, that more people would love me. The people outside of the gym would love me. The people in day-to-day life, they would finally accept me. And through that, I could accept myself. And that's a big logical fallacy right there. Just because others accept you, it does not mean that you have internal acceptance. That is such a key point. I really stress that to everyone. So basically, from 2010 to 2014, I was training 4 times a day, and I was addicted, and I would say that it was body dysmorphia, but really, it was masking body dysphoria. These are 2 separate things, although they are very similar and they probably, in a Venn diagram, they probably overlap. They're not the same thing. Trans people, gender non-conforming people, and non-binary people, they experience gender dysphoria. Whereas people who are happy, they're cis, they don't have any queerness or LGBTQI plus aspects necessarily, they experience body dysmorphia. So I thought I was experiencing body dysmorphia, and this only fueled me further, where I got more addicted to the gym. If I missed 1 session, I felt like my world was over. I was well and truly addicted. I would go there. If I ran out of time during the day, I would go after training. I'd be training from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And this ruined my sleep schedule and ruined relationships with my family. I became aggressive. Just the whole thing was falling apart. It did improve my acceptance after a year or 2. But when I saw these women, it wasn't clear to me whether I wanted to be with them or I wanted to be them. So this should have been a red flag going off in my head as well. Because I don't think a normal cis man would look at a woman that is interested in him, or just any kind of woman on the street, and wonder beyond wanting to be with them. I was thinking, I want to be them. And I really think this should have triggered some flags and some warning bells. And I should have investigated that further. So as time went on, probably from 2013 to 2014, I fell into a very, very deep depression. Because I was as big as I had ever been. I'd gained like 15 kilos of muscle. Yeah, I still had a full 6-pack. But when people would invite me to the gym, for example, to the beach, people would invite me to the beach, I would feel too uncomfortable to take my top off because I didn't feel comfortable. And truly, I think that was not body dysmorphia, that was gender dysphoria. But there is a golden lining to having been involved with kind of bodybuilding and gym culture, in that there was a forum called bodybuilding.com, and there was a sub-forum called The Misc, so it was like miscellaneous topics, not necessarily to do with bodybuilding itself. It was through this, I was just scrolling as I would each kind of night just for the entertainment. And then I saw a user called like Geeky Beth or something like this. Now this was the first kind of real authentic view or perspective I witnessed into a trans woman. Beyond that, trans women to me, in terms of the mainstream media as they had portrayed them, were the butt of jokes. They weren't necessarily real people. Of course they are real people, but the way they were presented, it skews their presentation into such a way that mainstream society does not humanize them. They go through a process of othering. So it was through my kind of exposure to someone that was somewhat similar to me, and that they had escaped into bodybuilding and fitness in terms of trying to fit into the male stereotype in order to make themselves feel better about their gender dysphoria. This person had posted a long post, and to be honest, the comments were atrocious. But still, I was used to those comments anyway, and I wanted to listen to the actual author, the original poster, not necessarily the comments. So I actually heeded a lot of the stuff they said, and I pondered this for a good few months. And really, this was the epiphany in my head. This was the moment that I realized I was trans. I realized that all of the exercise, the bodybuilding, trying to be masculine, trying to grow a beard, wearing masculine clothes, like having these masculine haircuts, that wasn't me. And it's scary. It's scary. It's like a huge realization. It'll hit you like a ton of bricks. You'll have a panic attack. You might even dissociate for a while. Once you come out on the other side, a weight will be lifted and you'll have amazing clarity. And it's like a light switch has gone off. I was like, damn, this explains everything. There's no more questions. I now know what I need to do, which is to progress this. And that's a whole other kettle of fish. Realizing is one thing, but taking the many steps, even the first step, is incredibly difficult and arduous, especially depending on your home country and their kind of legislation. So this was just the beginning of my journey. But finally, I had a journey in mind, and I knew that I wanted to get from point A to point B, which was to transition into a woman. And this felt amazing, and I finally had direction and clarity. I felt like my life was in order. Even though everything was falling apart, I'd distanced myself from friends. I had finished high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do at university. My father was very sick with cancer. My mom had cut me off. My granddad was dying, and my grandma was always visiting him and not very emotionally available. I pretty much only had one friend. So my life was far from great. It was free from bullying at this point, but I pretty much had no supports, and I had no one to turn to with this realization. And that's what I'm going to cover in the next video of this series. I'm going to explain A, where I turned to, B, what kind of reactions they had, and C, my planning for the next stages. So keep in touch and watch this playlist, because it's going to cover everything about kind of trans realizations and getting started as a trans woman. So that's going to include like the doctor's appointments, blood tests, obtaining hormones, finding support groups, having to go to psychiatrists to get approvals, having to go to psychologists, maybe a speech therapist, coming out to your immediate family, coming out to your friends, coming out to your workplace, coming out to your kind of hobby venues, kind of the interactions you have day-to-day life, the first time you use a different bathroom, changing your pronouns, changing your name, changing your legal documents. There's a whole plethora of things. So this is going to be a very hearty playlist, and it's going to have pretty much all your questions answered. And as always, I'm going to try and keep it very authentic, real, uncut. I'm just going to tell you the truth, and I'm going to tell you my story, my side of things. It might not resonate with you, but even if these videos on this playlist can help one person come to a realization or to improve their transition to make it easier for them, less stressful, less painful, it'll be worth it. So definitely tune into this playlist, and thank you for watching this video. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.